So it's about time for another baseline drive. I've been getting some questions about commenting on the Tom Izzo incident, for lack of a better phrase. Apparently, in the first round of the NC2A tournament, one of Coach Izzo's players at Michigan State had not been playing as well as he was expected or up to his potential, had made some mental mistakes and errors that weren't typical, and Coach Izzo got a little angry at him. And during a timeout, they came over to the bench and had a little heated exchange. The player kind of responded back, maybe in a way that Coach Izzo didn't like, and it escalated a little bit. Coach Izzo raised his voice, pointed his finger, and drew a lot of attention to the situation, and it's kind of become a hot topic lately in terms of player-coach relationships. One thing to consider is that when you're in the NC2A tournament, it's a single elimination game. Coach Izzo alluded to that. It's, win or go home, and a lot of times at that stage of the game, you expect people to not be making the same mistakes that they made earlier in the year. So he chose to scold the player a little bit, reprimand him, and with the way the game is played now, it's on national TV. Everybody got a chance to see that, and pulled back the curtain a little bit. Continued through the timeout. Coach continued to get angry. The player continued to talk back or respond, and some of the other players intervened a little bit, calmed Coach down, talked to the other player, and apparently by the end of the game, all was good again. So interesting dynamic in player-coach relationships when it comes to things like that. One thing that we all know about Tom Izzo is he lives life and coaches with a full passion bucket. I mean, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and a lot of times, joy and anger and love and hate comes from the same place in your gut because you care so much about something. And I'm sure that if Coach had a rewind button like we have on our DVR, if he was able to skip back 30 seconds, he might do things a little bit different. But we don't have one of those. So I know the coach won't necessarily apologize for being demanding, but I do think that he would himself say that he'd do things a little bit differently if he had a chance to do it all over again. What we all do have, though, is we all do have a pause button. We always talk to players about pausing for poise. And I think we as coaches or people in day-to-day life can always do that. Just take time to take a breath. Just in an NC2A tournament, when everything is on the line, things happen so fast, sometimes you forget to hit the pause button and do that. So one thing coaches need to understand is you need to be yourself. And I guess, wasn't it Shakespeare that said, "This above all, to thine own self be true"? You can't fake it, because that kids see right through that. So I believe what I saw during that whole event was interesting as well. When the other players intervened, and a lot of people said they held Coach back. I mean, there's a difference between holding someone back and being need to be held back. But those players didn't hesitate to put their hands on Coach, which to me says that there's an element of trust there. It's like a family. And they certainly weren't afraid to deal with Coach's anger. So that tells me that there's a lot of money in the bank. Those kids, understand where coach is coming from, and there's a lot of love going around as well. And I certainly think that we should be judged on the totality of our actions and not maybe our worst moment. So looking at that incident, it kind of told me that, coach probably has figured out, what I call that winning balance between being demanding and giving players love, so that they feel able to compete with some confidence and not play with fear. One thing that you don't see out of Michigan State's teams is them playing with fear. So I think that he's built that winning balance a little bit, and finding that balance between praise and scold and instruction and freedom and encouragement is, that's kind of like the secret that coaches are always trying to find. And I go back to something that I talk about a lot, maybe even on these baseline drives, is one of the very first papers that I did in a coaching theory class was on a research of John Wooden called What a Coach Can Teach a Teacher. And I probably can't refer back to that study enough, by Tharp and Gallimore, where they followed Coach Wooden around during his last season and coded over 2,500 different acts of teaching and coaching. And Coach always looked at himself as a teacher. So looking at that, what we found was some master teacher qualities. And years later, in 2008, Sheridan did a study on comparing and contrasting John Wooden with Pat Summitt, one of the most successful women's coaches in history, and found a lot of similarities. Coach Wooden didn't praise his players directly much more than he scolded them directly. It was almost a 1-to-1 ratio between direct scolds and direct praises, where Pat Summitt praised her ladies twice as much as she scolded them. But what's interesting when you look at what I call the Wooden quotient is that besides just a direct praise, there are some other things that go into creating that positive feeling. I had a chance to work coaches' camps and brought the praise scold relationship to his attention one time over breakfast, and pointed out that he didn't praise his players very much. And there are a few things that he said, but one of the sentences that I'll remember forever was, when you take the time to teach your boys, there's an implied confidence that you believe that they can achieve. And that belief is praise in itself. So Coach viewed instruction as praise. When you take a look at this study and factor in all of the instructive moments, Coach comes to about a 5-to-1 ratio of positives to scolds, or negatives, criticisms and corrections to successes and failures. And Coach Summitt was similar. So the key, I think, is maybe to measure the amount of scolds, because both of them hovered around 7%. Right? Pat Summitt and John Wooden both scolded their players about 7% of the time, and everything else factored into praise. Because positive memories aren't just things that are said. There are other kinds of things that happen. When you run a first-class program, there are certainly things that help you achieve that winning balance and make kids feel better. Coach Wooden always used to say that his starters get praised every time they get announced as starters, or every time that they're mentioned in the newspaper. So he took special time to to praise some of his substitutes, and I'm sure Coach Summit did something similar to that. Something else that was interesting, that as a tactic that was found by Tharp and Gallimore in the Wooden Studies, and Sheridan when they studied Coach Summit, was that quite often they would follow scolding with re-instructing. So they had a factor called scold re-instruct, where if you look at instruction as a positive, it's somewhat of that criticism sandwich idea, where you get their attention with the positive, and then you make your correction or scold them, and then you fill their passion bucket a little bit by praising them or instructing. So I think that's really what we're looking at. Is we're trying to find different ways to fill our players' passion buckets and get them ready to compete with some joy and effort, and intensity and enthusiasm, so they're able to find that winning balance and compete to the best of their ability. Let's follow that and those tactics through March Madness in the NC2A tournament, and every day wake up and make sure that you try to be great. Coach Loke out.